Hey everybody, Rob Maurer here, and today we'll of course talk about the latest on Elon Musk continued stock sale, but I know we've been talking a lot about that, so I do want to shift the focus a little bit. We do have exciting numbers to talk about out of China, an update on the Tesla Semi, and a couple of other interesting stories to cover. Just a quick note here, I am traveling this week, so the audio might sound a little bit different, and the schedule is going to be a little bit wonky as I have to coordinate a few different things. So things might be a little less consistent this week, and we might have to mix in some live streams and things like that. So appreciate you guys bearing with me through that. With that being said, let's take a look at the stock, which finished down almost 2% today to $1,013.39. And actually most of the day traded below that $1,000 per share mark. Kind of interestingly, I don't know, about an hour before close or so, we saw a really big spike up. And unfortunately, I'm not really sure what was happening there. There were some rumors on Twitter that maybe that was coinciding with Elon making the decision to stop selling shares on the open market and instead sell directly to an institution at a discount. Unfortunately, I don't have any insight into the credibility of those rumors, so for me, I'm kind of just ignoring that at this point. I would find it a little bit surprising. I mean, Elon has come this far selling on the open market, so to me, that kind of just feels like wishful thinking, but obviously something happened there that caused the stock to shoot up, and maybe at some point we'll find out, maybe not. The other thing that was kind of going on around that time is that the $1 trillion infrastructure bill was officially signed into law by President Biden, so that is all wrapped up. That, remember, does not have the EV tax credit, but does have some funds for EV charging stations. We'll talk a little bit more about the EV tax credit later on, but I don't think anything with the infrastructure bill had any influence on that big spike up that we saw. This was widely expected already at that point. Anyway, let's catch up on Elon Musk's stock sale. So he did continue that on Friday. We got more Form 4s after the two that we got in the morning in after hours. So he sold 1.2 million more shares on Friday. I would expect that that has continued today, but of course we're just going to have to wait and see if we get more Form 4s. That could happen while I'm recording. Who knows? But at least through Friday, Elon would have been at 6.4 million shares sold so far. So about 25 to 38% of the way through, depending on if we assume 10% is more like 17 million shares or 25 million shares. Elon did give a little bit more insight this weekend into something we've been pondering over the last few days, which is why he's selling these core shares rather than just exercising and selling the higher cost basis shares. He says, quote, "A careful observer would note that my low basis share sale rate significantly exceeds my 10B high basis option exercise rate, thus closer to tax maximization than minimization," end quote. So this is something that we had brought up as a possibility last week that I said I wouldn't even really mention if it weren't Elon, but it definitely seems like he is just trying to pay more taxes by selling those core shares. Obviously, there are some other factors like we had talked about, but certainly this is not minimizing his current tax liability. Again, I think Elon is trying to change the narrative a little bit and show that he does pay a significant amount of taxes. I have to imagine kind of this whole situation and the criticism has been very frustrating for him. And I think we probably saw a little bit of that frustration come out this weekend as well in a couple of tweets to Bernie Sanders, one of which said, "I keep forgetting that you're still alive." I don't want to dwell on these and I don't want to talk about all this tax stuff constantly. I do think this is a misstep though and in pretty poor taste. I'm sure Elon kind of views it as responding in kind to some of what he probably views as attacks on him from Bernie Sanders, but I definitely think there were better options there. I mean, Elon kind of had the ball in his court here, right? Elon is paying a lot of taxes. I think it's going to be the biggest tax bill ever. And as we discussed, it's going to be even bigger just because of some choices that Elon is making that are not minimizing his taxes. And of course, Elon is following all the laws that were put in place by people like Bernie Sanders in Congress. So aside from just naturally being a target as the richest person in the world, there's no real reason that Elon needs to come out and be defensive about this. And when he does it in ways like this, it makes him look like he is unhappy with the taxes that he is paying. That's the narrative that's building out there now, is that, okay, yeah, Elon's paying these taxes, but look how whiny he is about it. Look how much he's upset by it. And I don't think that's at all the reality, but Elon kind of taking the goodwill that could have been built up through the situation of essentially paying extra taxes and kind of just lighting it on fire and giving more ammunition to anyone that wants to criticize him. Anyway, again, don't want to dwell on it, and in the grand scheme of things, it's a pretty small thing, and obviously Elon has more than earned the right to handle these situations however he wants to, and that's totally fine, but should also be fine to give and get a little bit of feedback as well. All right, next up here, we've got some really exciting and validating news for Tesla in China. Looks like we are getting production reports a little bit earlier than we normally would. So D. Kirk on Twitter today sharing that made in China Model Y October production was 27,894 vehicles. And then a couple of different reports of Model 3 production in October in China being 27,660 vehicles. So combined, we'd be looking at 55,500 and 54. So these are incredibly strong production numbers that are hopefully not surprising to anyone that's been listening to Tesla Daily. This is basically the number that we have been talking about. It's actually a few hundred more. And remember, the reason this is so exciting is because there was that holiday from October 1st through 7th. So really only 24 calendar days, 3.4 calendar weeks. This would be production of 16.2 thousand vehicles per week. I don't have my production tracking spreadsheet with me. That's on my desktop, so we'll update that when I get back. But just like we had walked through before, this should set Tesla on a pretty clear path if they can maintain production around that level to be at 180,000 plus from Shanghai this quarter, and definitely puts 300,000 plus for total production in play, in my opinion. Now, remember, that doesn't necessarily mean deliveries. The EV tax credit could certainly throw a bit of a wrench in getting those vehicles delivered. But of course, I couldn't really care less if that revenue comes in Q4 or Q1. What's important is the production rate and what that can mean going forward. This production rate means very good things. All right, next up, we've got a couple of updates on the Tesla Semi. First, Elon replying to a question from James Stevenson asking about the comments made by Pepsi's CEO about expecting Tesla Semi deliveries in Q4. Elon saying, quote, "Please don't read too much into this. As mentioned publicly, Tesla is constrained by chip supply short-term and cell supply long-term. Not possible to produce additional vehicles in volume until both constraints are addressed," end quote. So let's go ahead and read into that a little bit. It doesn't actually seem like a denial to me. It actually seems more of like a confirmation that it's going to happen, and then when it does happen, to not read into it. And from that perspective, I completely agree. I think what we're going to see is some very, very limited production of the Semi from Giga Nevada. We've kind of seen some rumors around that. So if that is accurate, then they could use that to supply Pepsi with a few trucks, just really as more of a test than anything else. And not just a test for Tesla, but also a test for Pepsi. Tesla may see them as a strategic partner in the future, ordering a high volume of trucks. So if they can start testing earlier and get validation earlier, that'll allow them to commit more aggressively. And because there's infrastructure build out that's going to be required for the Semi in terms of megachargers, having a close partner like that would be good for Tesla to best build out that infrastructure. And if other companies see Pepsi testing out the Semi for 12, 18 months, 24 months, whatever the case may be, and then aggressively committing, that's a strong signal for other companies then as well, kind of like what we talked about with the Hertz deal. So yeah, nothing here is going to impact the financials right now, but still very exciting if we do end up seeing some sort of small test take place there. The other update that we've got on the Semi is pretty exciting here. A few photos being shared out on Twitter by H.W. Feinstein of the Semi charging at Giga Nevada. And this seems to be the same spot that we had previously talked about what are believed to be mega chargers being in construction. So this may be our first look at sort of a finished version of that. Obviously that remains unconfirmed, but that does seem likely. And if so, I think they look great. The cable looks really thin. No shot of the connector, unfortunately, but really exciting to see some of the progress on the Semi here, even if we do have to wait a bit for Tesla to be able to start production. All right, next up here, just a couple of quick ones. You may have seen Elon reply to a Consumer Reports tweet and article about the Model 3 and the Model S being two of the top 3 most satisfying vehicles from their consumer surveys. Obviously, that is good to see, but it's not good news because this was actually from back in February, so of course we talked about it a long time ago. Not sure why Elon is bumping that up right now, but just wanted to point out that that was something that happened a while back. Something that is new is that we've started to see some reports of Starlink dishes being spotted at Tesla superchargers, and it's also been reported that the names of the Wi-Fi networks that were available, at least at one of these, were both Tesla and Tesla Service. So it would kind of appear that Tesla is at least planning on testing out using Starlink receivers there at superchargers for customers. It's just a really cool microcosm of everything that has been accomplished by both SpaceX and Tesla, and just such a beautiful pairing of both of those accomplishments. All right, last couple of things. First up, we continue our series of disappointing statements and announcements from Toyota. They've announced that they have teamed up with Subaru, Mazda, Kawasaki, and Yamaha to continue to develop internal combustion engine vehicles, and released a statement about that collaboration saying, quote, "By promoting further collaboration in producing, transporting, and using fuel in combination with internal combustion engines, the 5 companies aim to provide customers with greater choice," end quote. Now, to be fair, they seem to be talking about biofuels or hydrogen, things like that, rather than just gasoline. But it's perplexing to see the continued effort on some of these areas that have had very limited, if any, success when we have already seen how successful EVs have been. I mean, maybe not perplexing. They seem to just want to continue to make engines, but seems like the wrong path. Next is some more news on the EV tax credit. So there's been a little bit more international pushback, this time from Canada's Minister of Foreign Affairs. who has expressed her concern about certain portions of the credit or certain timelines tied to the credit being exclusive of vehicles not made in the United States. And obviously the $4,500 union credit would be a part of that. Sounds like Canada's Prime Minister Trudeau is expected to raise that message in meetings with Congress this week. Certainly seems to be a lot of very specific pushback, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. All right, lastly then, just a quick note that the Lucid Air has been selected by Motor Trend as their car of the year for 2022. So congratulations to Lucid on that. I think we're obviously still understandably a little bit skeptical of Lucid until we can see a little bit more from actual owners, but certainly a nice early accolade for them there from Motor Trend. That'll pretty much wrap it up for today then. Again, appreciate you all bearing with me through some travels this week. I do have all of my normal recording stuff, so I'm not sure why it's sounding a bit different today. But trust me, I'm giving my best effort to make everything here as smooth as possible as I work around some other things. So I do appreciate the patience, and as always, thank you for listening. Make sure you're subscribed and signed up for notifications. You can also find me on Twitter at Tesla Podcast, and I'll see you tomorrow for the Tuesday, November 16th episode of Tesla Daily. Thank you.